This morning, we begin our month-long stewardship journey focus entitled A Journey to Generosity, the Way of Jesus. So often when we focus on stewardship, we think that the focus is only on money. And yes, there is a very significant financial component to our faithful stewardship. But generosity and following the ways of Jesus must be first built upon a foundation of good news. It must be built first upon a foundation of worship. It must be first built upon a foundation of taking risks, especially when things seem stormy or rocky. It requires first and foremost a foundation of our faith. And I believe there is no better place to start our stewardship campaign this year and conversations about our faith and following the ways of Jesus than on this Totenfest Sunday, when we remember those who have gone on before us and who have planted the seeds of life and faith within us. And so, church, I want to invite you to join me, please, in prayer. Lord, when life gets difficult and the storms of life rage around us, fill us with the confidence that you are always with us, that you come to us in the midst of the storm, and that you give us peace. Give us, O God, the courage to risk and to get out of the boat, meeting you as you have come to meet us. And, O God, in light of today's gospel, help us to follow you even when you lead us into the storm rather than out of it. Teach us not to cower in fear when by your grace you lead us into deep water and even at times push us into the storm. O God, may the storms that we face and the dangers we risk be done for you rather than for ourselves, that we might be your faithful followers, your faithful stewards wherever you take us, even if that is indeed into the storm. And now, O God, may the words of my lips and the meditations found within the hearts and the minds of those gathered here be pleasing, be acceptable, and be faithful to you. Amen. Among some of the very first words spoken in the Gospel of Matthew are these words from an angel of the Lord to Joseph, who was scared and who was confused. And the angel said to him, "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." Now that's easy for the angel to say. His fiancée is not 14 and pregnant. The angel's fiancée is not facing shame or exile and possibly even death. But yet there those words are, "Do not be afraid," hanging out there, just waiting to be embraced. Don't be afraid. These same words also seek to bring closure to the gospel as among some of the final words spoken in Matthew. Don't be afraid, the angel said at the tomb of Jesus on Easter Day. He's not here. The one that you're looking for, this Jesus, he's been resurrected. And no more than just 5 verses later, the women who arrived at the tomb on that Easter Day hear those words again, but this time out of the mouth of the resurrected Christ himself. Don't be afraid, he said. Don't be afraid. Go to Galilee. Tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and I will meet them there. Now again, those words, "don't be afraid," they are easy words to say coming out of the mouth of an angel or even the resurrected Jesus. It's almost as if one of the key themes in Matthew is don't be afraid. Don't fear. Have faith. Because God is going to be with you in the midst of it all. Almost because it is. Because it is. But saying don't be afraid and actually not being afraid, not being anxious, not allowing those fears to hold on to you or to paralyze you or to hold you captive, well, those are two different things. Our fear that we will not have enough forces us, some of us, to spend far more time at our jobs than we should. On average, Americans work anywhere from 10 to 20% more hours per week than our counterparts, our peers in the largest economies within the world. The average full-time working American works an average of 47 hours a week, which equates to 6 days a week. In case you forgot, there are only 7 days. 40% of Americans work more than 50 hours a week. Why? I believe because of fear. We might not admit it, but I truly believe that is why. We're afraid we can't pay our kids' college tuition. We're afraid that if we don't work now, then we won't have enough when the time comes when we have to stop working. Or we are afraid that we cannot buy enough nice things that put us in a position to be among others like us. People who also have nice things. People who are also, I bet, afraid. All of this takes time away from our family. It takes time away from healthy behavior, from exercise, from eating right, from Sabbath rest and rejuvenation. It impacts our health, physical and emotional, mental as well. There's also our fear of the other. The person who looks different than us, the person who has a different upbringing and a different story than we do, a person who does not quite fit into our expectations of family units. This fear can literally keep us locked behind closed doors. In our cars, in our homes, even, yes, in our churches. We are afraid that someone is going to hurt us, that someone is going to take away something that is cherished by us. Fear keeps us from being the people God has called us and created us to be. Fear keeps us from being the church that God has called us and created us to be. It's easy to be afraid. Afraid that there aren't enough people. Afraid that there isn't enough money. Afraid that there isn't enough time. Afraid that there isn't enough faith. That's the real issue. That's the real issue, and that's the real battle that exists within each person and within each congregation. Will we have the faith? Because faith and fear are one another's enemies. They live constantly in tension and in competition of one another. Fear is always chipping away at what we say we believe and affirm in our worship and in our Bible study and in our mission. But faith tells us that we have more than enough. Faith tells us that God will provide what we need. Maybe not what we want, but that faith will provide for us what we need. Faith tells us that God is an abundant God, not a God of scarcity, and that God will never abandon God's people. And then fear pops up. And fear begins to say, well, I don't know about that. Things are not what they used to be. It feels a little scary. The future feels a little fuzzy. The waters, they don't feel very calm. It seems a little stormy out there. The boat is rocking. A little too much for my comfort. That is the sound of fear talking. And with all of that fear whispering back here in our ear, we say, God, are you there? Is that you, God? If it is, tell me to do something. And then faith says to us, come to me. Get out of the boat. It's going to be okay. 174 years ago, this congregation began its witness and its ministry. That did not happen by staying in the boat. Throughout the course of our ministry and witness, great risks have been taken by those who have come and gone before us, by those who have gone on before us to join that great cloud of witnesses. The founding of Evangelical Children's Home and Deaconess Hospital, that didn't happen. That didn't happen, y'all, by staying in the boat. 2 ministry campuses, one down on St. Louis and Warney and the other here, that didn't happen by staying in the boat. A community resource center built debt-free, that does not happen by staying in the boat. Open gym, Salam Clinic, creative ministry, St. Peter's Cemetery are significant and abundant endowment that allows so much of what we do and to be. None of that happens by staying in the boat. So on this Totenfest, we can learn a lot about faith and stewardship from those who have gone on before. Because faith and stewardship, they go hand in hand. One is built upon the other. You can't be a good steward of what God has given to you without having a deep faith and trust in God. And you cannot profess faithfulness and not exhibit good stewardship. And I'm not just talking about a community. I mean each and every one of us. These are not just communal concepts. These are individual concepts. Remember, Jesus told Peter, he didn't say to the whole group of disciples in the boat, get out. No, he said to Peter, the individual, come. Come to me. And Peter did. He got up out of the boat, he started walking on the water, and then the winds picked up. Peter got some pushback from his risk. Things went from rocky to calm. All seemed okay. But then when things got a little stormy again, did Peter remember the voice of the one who told him to come? No, he didn't. He heard the fearful voice in his ear, the winds of fear, and he began to sink. But he didn't drown. He didn't drown. But his faith was questioned. Jesus questioned the faith of Peter. Why were you afraid? Didn't I tell you don't be afraid? Why are you afraid? It's not just a reoccurring theme in Matthew. It's a reoccurring theme for you and for me also. Because in spite of our ears hearing the constant sound of do not be afraid, and in spite of knowing it up here, fear still grips us right here. And we make excuses, and we sabotage ourselves, and we come up with the reasons not to be the risky person, the reasons not to be the faithful person, the reasons not to be the good stewardship person. But what if I don't have enough? I'm afraid I won't. If I share with God or with the church or with others, I might not have enough for me. I might not have enough for my family. Or maybe, as seems the case sometimes here at St. Peter's, haven't the saints before us provided more than enough for us now? I don't have to share. I don't have to share because of what they've done before us. I can keep what I have to myself. Yeah. No. No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way because just as the sins of the ancestors are not passed down to the descendants, the faithful and the good steward, the faithfulness and the good stewardship of those before us does not give us a pass now. God is and will be with us, among us now, just as God was with them then. God has always provided for God's people who respond in faith. So when God says, "Come to me, get out of the boat," the question before us is this: will we? Will we get out of the boat? Will we rise up? Will we step out and do something that seems impossible, because it is like walking on water? And will we keep walking in the faith, even when the wind is pushing back against us? Will we recognize that God is and always has been and always will be a generous God? Or will we, at the first sign of trouble, become afraid? Listening to doubt, become self-defeating, begin to drown. How you respond depends on a couple of things. It depends upon your faith, and it depends upon your stewardship. And your stewardship and your faith, they can't be separated. They just can't.